Hello there, this is World of Africa with me, Alyson Grange. On the show this week, we highlight Zimbabwe, where just ahead of the polls, the government has passed a new law that has sparked widespread outrage. We also tell you about an expanding hobby on the streets of South Africa. Welcome to the program. There is an epidemic that is spreading fast and causing alarm across the continent. The latest victim to fall prey to the disease is South Africa. Cholera has claimed thousands of lives in the past 2 years, with Malawi being the worst affected country when the disease was reported in 2021. The World Health Body now says cholera is a global threat to public health. Here's a report.
This hospital in Hammanskraal, South Africa, has been busy for the past few weeks. It has registered an uptick in patients showing symptoms of a disease that until now was unheard of in the area: cholera. Some of the cases have been fatal.
We could be able to report that all these deaths that we are reporting as cholera related have taken place in the hospital. So which actually says to us, could there be any other deaths that are taking place outside there that we are not aware of, including those 8 that have happened in the Free State that we are not putting as our statistics because we have not confirmed that through stool specimens that those were part of a cholera outbreak.
When the cholera outbreak was confirmed here, it was hardly a surprise to many of its residents, queuing up for handouts of bottles of clean water and soap.
Sometimes it smells like a river. It smells like a water river. They got water from the river. Sometimes smells a little bit good, but sometimes we can smell it the smell is like a sewage.
Clean water and sanitation have always been an issue in Hammanskraal, a poor area housing about 120,000 people. The latest epidemic in the area has already killed 23. It's not just South Africa dealing with an explosion in cholera cases. The World Health Organization estimates that at least 14 nations, including the war-ravaged Sudan, are battling the disease. Among them also is Cameroon, where the citizens are struggling for clean drinking water.
Drinking water points are extremely rare. It is so rare and not very visible, and few neighborhoods have them. So when there is a point like this, everyone rushes, and already you have seen the difficulties people have had to get it from here. It's a struggle, so it's not easy at all. Drinking water in the city of Douala is like a treasure.
The health ministry says at least 26 people have died in Cameroon's ongoing cholera outbreak in the recent weeks, taking the overall toll to 426. The outbreak was declared in October 2021 and has seen a strong increase in cases since late March of this year after a period of low transmission. The number of confirmed cases in Cameroon now stands at over 1,800. A shortage of cholera vaccines is likely to last until 2025 as outbreaks surge worldwide. The Global Vaccine Alliance says, days after the World Health Organization warned that the short-term outlook for controlling the disease was bleak. Cholera cases and deaths jumped last year as the deadly disease spread to new regions, particularly conflict zones and areas with high levels of poverty. In response, the World Health Organization and partners temporarily switched to using 1 dose of a vaccine that is normally given as 2 doses.
However, the current wave of outbreaks is putting unprecedented pressure on the stockpile. As a result, the 4 agencies have decided to suspend the 2-dose strategy in favor of a 1-dose strategy so that more people receive some protection.
Cholera is spread by ingesting contaminated food or water, and while it often causes mild symptoms or none at all, serious cases cause acute diarrhea and kill within hours if untreated. Access to safe water and sanitation are important to stop the disease, as well as vaccination and speedy treatment. The WHO is particularly concerned as many countries were reporting higher case fatality ratios than in previous years. In an effort to stop and control the spread of cholera in the Hammanskraal township, the Gauteng Health has established a field hospital in Kanana to handle the rising incidence of infections. The Department of Health has erected temporary tents to treat residents exhibiting symptoms of dehydration, vomiting and diarrhea, with critical patients being transported to hospitals. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Zimbabwe's parliament passed a law that prohibits citizens from criticizing the government. 2 months before it holds presidential elections, lawmakers approved the so-called patriotic bill and sent it for assent by the Senate. Offenders who engage in unpatriotic conduct or bad-mouthing the state can have their citizenship revoked, be imprisoned for 20 years, and even face the death penalty, even though capital punishment hasn't been administered in the country for the past 2 decades. Here's a report from Harare.
On the 23rd of August, Zimbabwe will hold its presidential and parliamentary elections. This was announced by President Emerson Mnangagwa amid speculation that it could be postponed.
My government has put measures in place to ensure free, fair, and credible elections.
The country's parliament, however, had other ideas. Even before the campaigns could be officiated, parliamentarians tabled, debated, and passed a bill that prohibits citizens from criticizing the government. The Patriotic Bill criminalizes acts that damage the sovereignty and national interest. In the most extreme cases, violators can face up to 20 years in prison. Offenders also run the risk of citizenship being revoked and a death penalty. Authorities say the bill is modeled on US's Logan Act and it ostensibly promotes patriotism. Passage of the bill has left Zimbabwe's opposition parties outraged.
What they're criminalizing is differing opinion against ZANU-PF and a different opinion from Mnangagwa himself, who's a presidential candidate for ZANU-PF. And this happens at the edge of an election, showing without any doubt that the envelope of reform is being done by ZANU, contrary to what they put, particularly in the international community.
Many argue that the bill bans anyone from criticizing the government, at a time when rights groups and opposition parties are already complaining of a clampdown.
They want to be seen to be hardliners, so they want this law to try and put fear in the hearts of the electorate, in the hearts of the opposition, by using this bad law, which is coming on the eve of an election.
The new legislation provides, among other things, for the punishment of those who actively take part in meetings where sanctions or a trade boycott against Zimbabwe are discussed. The bill is the latest in a series of moves that critics say aims to shut down dissenting voices in the run-up to the elections. The law will now go to the Senate. 80-year-old Mnangagwa, who replaced strongman ruler Robert Mugabe in 2017 after a military-led coup, is seeking a second term in August. His main challenger is Nelson Chamisa, a 45-year-old lawyer and pastor, who leads the recently formed CCC party and narrowly lost to Mnangagwa in 2018.
Any voters' fraud that is not credible will not be accepted and will not accept it. And I know some will say, are you going to boycott election? We will not boycott ourselves. We are the elections. The people of Zimbabwe are and have the rights. They are the ultimate authority when it comes to what should happen.
Earlier this year, civic activists voiced fears of irregularities after an analysis of electoral boundaries redrawn ahead of the vote showed some wards to be located in Antarctica. All eyes are now on the upcoming polls, as the southern African country has a history of violent and disputed elections. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Let's go to West Africa now, where Nigeria has ushered in a new era with the inauguration of its new leader, Bola Tinubu. But the president has a lot to deal with in his entry to the villa. Fuel prices nearly tripled after the President Tinubu announced the end of the government's fuel subsidy. Louisa Olaniyi reports from Lagos.
Nigeria's new president shocked the nation by scrapping the fuel subsidy, a decision that has sparked chaos with snaking queues across the country at petrol stations. Analysts differ with Tinubu's stance. They say citizens would suffer for the past government's inadequacies and inability to refine crude oil locally. They want Tinubu-led government to carry out a forensic audit of what they call fuel subsidy scam that ran for years and enhance modular refineries.
The contract of a government with its people, the first in the constitution said that the primary responsibility of governments is the security and welfare of its citizens. So for petrol in Nigeria is a welfare issue. Petrol is like oxygen in Nigeria. You used to transport yourself. There are no public transport that are good. We depend on public vehicles that use petrol. We depend on our own vehicle to move petrol. We move around with petrol. We power our electricity with petrol. We do everything with petrol.
Following the announcement, the state-run NNPCL directed its outlets nationwide to sell fuel between 480 naira and 570 naira per litre, an almost 200% increase from the initial price, which was below 200 naira. Data sourced from the Global Petrol Prices, a website that tracks retail prices of refined petroleum products, show prices across Africa are no longer as wide, which creates arbitrage incentivizing the smuggling of petrol from Nigerian borders. Business of smuggling the country's petrol is no longer viable as cost differentials are no longer attractive enough. The price difference between the average price in Nigeria and Benin is less than 150 naira per litre and about 200 naira per litre from other West African neighbours, indicating that Nigeria's subsidy removal will roil the market for illicit petrol across Africa. Citizens, on the other hand, continue to lament the removal of the fuel subsidy. Meanwhile, the 71-year-old President Bola Tinubu has picked up his first big fight with trade unions by deciding to scrap fuel subsidies. The Nigeria Labour Congress said it would embark on a nationwide protest from June 7th if the National Petroleum Company does not roll back the new price regime. Nigeria's decades-long subsidy has kept down the price of petroleum products. Despite its oil riches, the country is unable to refine crude locally to meet demand. The 4 state-owned refineries are moribund, forcing the country to import refined petroleum products, which are then sold at a price fixed by the government.
Coming to terms with the reality of fuel price hike in Nigeria is what Nigerians are grappling with at the moment. From about 196 naira per litre to over 500 naira as the case may be, the fuel subsidy regime seems over for good, all thanks to the daring step of the new administration. But Nigerians look forward to palliative measures that will help cushion the effect of the shocking reality. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olani, WION, World is One.
Let's head north now, where Moroccans have had enough of the inhumane handling of their best friends. And no, we don't mean humans. Animal activists in the country are up in arms over the mistreatment and sometimes killing of stray dogs, and are now demanding justice and proper protection policies to be implemented for the voiceless creatures.
They marched to the Moroccan parliament to lend their support and voice for the voiceless. Dogs. These groups of protesters and activists assembled in the capital Rabat to demand a ban on what they call merciless killing of stray animals.
We've organized this peaceful sit-in as a national citizens' mobilization to demand 3 things. Our 3 demands are: first, an immediate halt to and the ban on slaughter of street dogs. Secondly, we demand the implementation of the TNVR program, which consists of capturing, sterilizing, vaccinating and identifying dogs and releasing them where they were captured. And thirdly, we're asking parliamentarians to pass animal protection legislation.
Ahead of the protest, the country's interior ministry told local media it had already taken measures to encourage municipalities to avoid using firearms and poisons to kill stray dogs. But some activists remained unconvinced.
With all the love in the world, we want to find a solution. We know that dogs in Morocco are a problem, but there is a solution. It's the TNVR program which must be respected. Sterilization, vaccination, and on the long term, it's a sustainable solution. This ruthless solution is not a sustainable one, and we can't remain silent in the face of these animals who have no voice.
Packs of stray dogs are a common sight in North African cities, but have also been known to be dangerous and at times mauling children to death. However, animal rights groups urge more humane solutions than mass culling. In Tunisia, municipalities have been shooting stray dogs for 50 years, thinking it's a solution to the problem of the overpopulation of dogs. Activists insist a proper law should be enacted to protect the defenseless animals rather than killing, which authorities claim the purpose is to stop reproduction. Animal welfare groups like these are advocating for the TNVR program, which stands for Trap, Neuter, Vaccinate and Return. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
In one of South Africa's biggest townships, Southwestern Township and Inner Johannesburg, a new biking subculture phenomenon has emerged, and daring riders are repurposing the streets. Every weekend, various groups of kids and adults take over the streets of the township, many even riding through the streets of Johannesburg. Our reporter, Kalden Ongmu, has filed this story.
This is Soweto, a township famous not just because of its size, but it is the birthplace of the anti-apartheid movement. The face of this township is changing rapidly. The roads of Soweto that have been mostly dominated by cars for many years are slowly changing form. A new biking subculture phenomena have emerged over the last few years, and the daring riders are repurposing the streets.
We've been doing this for many years, over 15 years. And when we introduced cycling as a way of getting around and seeing the township, seeing the various sides of Soweto, it was something that it was new for many. It was new in Soweto, and some people would think that we were a little bit crazy. The late founder, Lebu, that's why the business is called Lebu Soweto Backpackers. That's my late husband. He just had this little bit crazy idea at that time, but it took off after a couple of years, and we've been very successful in terms of introducing cycling in our part of Soweto.
Under apartheid, cycling was purely a way to commute to work, but the world is changing fast. Urban cycling culture in Soweto and also in Johannesburg is growing quite numerously. People nowadays are using cycle not just as a mode of transport to work, but young entrepreneurs are using cycle as the urban hip culture to show tourists around the township.
We've obviously been more catering for a tourist market, but with this current trend, we are also able to have more locals coming through. We do monthly sunset rides as well, so whenever also there's an event, mostly it's the last Thursday of the month, but also when there are public holidays, we actually advertise a sunset ride, making it very affordable, safe and convenient for local people to come through.
The cycling street culture have infiltrated scores of young black riders across the country. These young people are using the urban spaces to express their individuality and freedom.
So every Sunday we meet up at 10 in Palmfontein, and then there's different locations every Sunday. So we cycle from 10 until 2, and then age groups, it's the Soweto Street Fighters, so from your scholars, and then to varsity, working class, different from people from different backgrounds like journalists, musicians, creatives, corporates. We all just come together.
Young people with fresh mind are trying the best to stay away from bad influence and keeping themselves busy with a hobby such as cycling that's helping them not just individually but also building a strong camaraderie. This is Kalden Ongmu from Johannesburg, South Africa for WION World is One.
How many of us can imagine living beyond 100 years? Well, one Tunisian man, he is living up to all our imaginations. He is 119 years old and is still living a healthy life and telling tales of the days that we only read about in books.
Singing and beating the bended instrument surrounded by his family members, Hussein Al-Misawi is the oldest living man in Tunisia. He is 119 years old. He is not aware of his age, but his family members and a doctor from the Elderly Nursing Home Association in Kasserine confirm his age.
Mr. Hussain was born on the 5th of December 1904. He celebrated his 119th birthday last week. We took advantage of his presence, the state of Kasserine, to follow up on his health. We used the available specialized medical devices to check on his heart, and the results were excellent. He suffers from blood pressure, but he manages it with the simplest medicine available at all public health dispensaries, and he used it when he feels he needs to. Additionally, he experiences hearing impairment and discomfort in his joints. Such health conditions are usually associated with people in their 50s or 60s. But his overall health is excellent.
Al-Missawi is not just the oldest living man in Tunisia. He is a freedom fighter for the country. He has lived through both the world wars and relentlessly pursued the colonialists. He suffered a great ordeal, and the scars in his body bear witness to hardships he faced at the hands of French colonialists.
In the past, we used to satiate our hunger by eating grass and leaves from the forest trees in Unjabak al-Jugidi. During that time, there were numerous casualties from the French forces. We would collect their weapons at that time, so we would fight against the colonizer using their own weapons.
Hussein's youngest brother, who is 83 years old, says his brother sacrificed a lot in order to fight for his country.
Hussein participated in the liberation of Tunisia. During the revolution, he went to the mountains and we lost track of his whereabouts. He would stay there for 2 or 3 months and we wouldn't see him. It was until after Tunisia gained independence that he actively searched for us and eventually found us.
Hussein only got to marry at a later stage in life. His wife, who is now 88, helps him with his mobility. His daughter says Hussein has continued to live life like he is still living in the colonial era.
In our house, we live in very difficult conditions. My father lived during the colonial era and continues to live as if it were the time. Even now, he only eats couscous and olive oil.
Despite poverty and living in a rundown house, the 119-year-old is surrounded by the warmth and love of his family. He has 9 children and 40 grandchildren. Relatives and neighbors visit him regularly to listen to his tales of heroism. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And that's it on this week's episode of World of Africa with me, Alyson Lagrange. Thanks for watching. Get in touch with us on all our social media platforms. We would love to hear from you. From the whole team here at WION and Durban, in South Africa, we say Salagashle, which means goodbye.